Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneur's Inner Game podcast. Today, I'm sharing the time with a very dear friend, Renny Gabriel. Renny and I have been in the same mastermind and we have kept in touch over the years, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's very much into accumulating so he can give away as much as possible. He is the award-winning, best-selling author of Wealth on Any Income. He supported thousands of business owners through his book, programs and coaching, to move from a challenge with finances to a place of power and freedom. Starting from broke at the age of 50, his net worth is now the top 1% of Americans. And his goal is to create more wealth for others so they can become philanthropic just like himself. He lives on his investment income and donates 100% of his wealth practice profits to the charity Shelter to Soldier. And he and his wife live in Encino, California with their rescue dogs. Renny, it is such a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Nina. It's absolutely my pleasure. You've done so much to support me with mindset.
And I'm sure we're going to have a really great discussion about what it takes to be, not just to accumulate wealth, but to get to that stage as an entrepreneur where you can start paying yourself.
It's funny, that's a part of what I would say. And where it comes from is people recognizing, acknowledging, and accepting that they deserve to own some of the money that they're earning. And what I mean by that is that they need to put themselves first in line before making mortgage payments or car payments or interest payments or buying the groceries or anything else. The concept is 5,000 years old. And when you and I are dust, this concept will still be working. And it's called Pay Yourself First. And it comes from a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, which was printed around, I think around 1920 or so. And it talked about how they found clay tablets when they excavated the city of Babylon, which was one of the wealthiest city-states on the planet 5,000 years earlier. And they were literally able to trace some people's lives and find out the most successful and wealthiest people paid themselves first. And from that, they were able to create wealth. They could be philanthropic and they could do everything else.
Excellent. And I want to come back to this, explore this in more detail. But first, I'd love you to share your story of how you went from being broke at the age of 50 to being one of the top 1% of wealthy Americans.
Well, I did what I'm promoting, which is I paid myself first. And I wasn't earning a lot of money. I think that's one of the important things. I was providing business coaching to some CPA and financial planning firms. I was earning about $5,000 a month. And so I set aside 10% of that, $500 a month. And I was buying some individual stocks from the Dow Jones Industrial Average because I was insecure. I wanted to put my money in companies that were likely to outlive me. And, I was looking for that kind of security. I'd accumulated about $18,000. I mean, this was about the most money I'd ever had in my life. And my wife was married to a realtor. She was in real estate also, previously married. And he said he found a little 3-unit building that he wanted to acquire, and would we like to buy it with him? And I always had a bias toward real estate and multi-units, not individual houses. So I cashed in all the stock. I took the $18,000 and contributed that as the down payment on this triplex. My wife came up with $18,000 because I didn't have the money by myself. He contributed $36,000. So the three of us bought it, and we made improvements to it. We increased the rents, and we were able to sell it about 6 years later for a $500,000 or $520,000 profit. So my little $18,000 within 6 years became 130,000. I could see that was working for us. So I borrowed more money so we could make down payments on more apartment buildings. And that's how it started.
And how did your mindset change from feeling broke to accumulating wealth? Because not just the external world changes, but you have to keep up with your thinking, don't you? Otherwise, you could self-sabotage, you could blow the whole thing out of the water. How did you maintain that level of growth without self-sabotaging or putting the brakes on it all?
There were several things. One of them is that there's a distinction between the word broke, which means I had no money, or the word poor, which is a mindset term. I was never poor. I was broke. And that's an important distinction. That's number one. Number two, I didn't do this by myself. While my wife was nervous about stuff, I was confident, and her real estate partner was confident. And he generally found things that were mismanaged, had deferred maintenance, and had the ability for us to turn it around and make a significant profit. And that is the formula we followed. We bought properties that were had deferred maintenance, needed repairs, and were poorly managed. And we brought better management to it. We made improvements, re-roofed, redid plumbing, remodeled, whatever. And that also fit our personalities, which was, well, I've got a controlling personality. I'll put it that way. It doesn't matter how much General Motors stock I buy. They don't care what my opinion is. But with the real estate, we could choose where we would buy it, if we'd keep it, how we'd improve it, what the tenants would be like. We were in control. We were able to make all the decisions, and that fit my personality.
And what does a wealthy mindset, what does it mean to you?
What it means to me is you hang around with people who have the mindset you want to adopt. I think that Jim Rohn said, your income will be the average of the 5 people you most hang around with. And that real estate partner earned an excellent income. And I wanted that mindset to rub off on me. So we hung around a lot together. We'd have lunch, we would talk, and that makes a difference. I mean, if I was working on an assembly line and everyone else I knew was working on an assembly line, we were hourly wage earners, the opinions and the attitudes and the thinking are all going to be the same of hourly wage earners. So I needed to hang around with people who were more prosperous, who were generating more income. I did that with a friend of mine I met in a course through Landmark. I would hang around with an attorney who developed shopping centers. I decided to become friends and hang around with people who I saw as far more wealthy than me.
And did that help you to significantly change your thinking around wealth and abundance?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Because they would say, the attorney decided he was going to buy an orange grove. And we would have, it was sort of like, I'm going to buy an orange grove. Oh, really? And we talk about his thinking behind it and this and that. It expanded my thinking. He decided he was going to open up a business to advertise in gyms and workout studios. And it would be an electronic billboard, and it would change and it's sort of like he did this with his son. And it was like, they ended up selling that business for $15 million. And he just had an idea and moved forward on it. That kind of thinking rubs off.
So it's having an idea and actually implementing it rather than just having an idea and thinking, oh, okay, but never getting around to do anything about it.
No. And it's funny, too, because there's a lot of people who I hear will say something like, see that product over there? I thought about that 10 years earlier. Yeah, but that person put it into action and made it happen.
Absolutely true. This is such great stuff. Now, you said that as entrepreneurs, we need to start paying ourselves first.
Yes.
So let's say there's someone, who's listening and watching who feels that they haven't really made any sales
Hmm.
in March. So how are they going to pay themselves first? Because there are outgoings in every business, aren't there? There may be small outgoings, there may be bigger outgoings, but there are definitely outgoings with any business, even as an online business.
Oh, absolutely. Let me give you an example. I got together with an attorney who I was talking to about paying himself first. And he said, a lot of times my bills will run at $6,500 a month, but I might only get $6,000 of income that month. So I'm $500 short. I can't pay myself first. And I said, well, here's how I phrased it. I said, okay, so let's say $6,000 comes in and you pay yourself just 10%. You set it aside like you deserve to own 10% of what you're working for. That's $600. Okay. So now you have $5,400 to pay $6,500 of bills. I'm trying to figure out how to clean up my language. What the F difference does it make? You're still short. You're short either way, except this way, you've treated yourself like you deserve to own some of the money. Well, he was very resistant, but he did it. And as a result of that, his collections increased and his income grew beyond his billings, his expenses. So his billings grew beyond his expenses. That's how I should have said it. The point, I had that same experience with a psychiatrist. She said the same thing. She said, all the money that comes in is the same amount that goes out. I have nothing left over. And I said, that's the problem. You're not first in line. Her income jumped 20% once she put herself first in line. Because
what do you put that down to? Why is that thinking, that different thinking and different action taking, what is it triggering inside that person for them to start increasing their income?
I don't want to get a little woo-woo here.
No, please do.
Okay, but that's how I viewed it for myself. When I showed the universe that I was able to handle money more effectively, it gave me more money. That's the only way I could say it. There's something that happens when you declare, I'm prepared to earn more money. I'm going to treat it more appropriately. More of it shows up. Clients show up. You feel you can increase your hourly rate or your billing rate or your client rate or your contract rate, and people won't run away from you. You'll end up getting more business. And those are the things that happens. Those are the things that happen.
And this is such a great thing that you've touched on, because as you put out to the universe, you deserve to have some of this money, even if it's 10%, then you see the value in yourself. And as you're putting that out, then more will be brought to you. It has to be, doesn't it? Because as you're showing up and saying, I really deserve this, I have enough value to have this, then it's like a magnetic attraction coming back again and again.
Yeah. And so when you're meeting with other people, what you're exuding is that you deserve to be paid what it is you're asking for. And other people in your audience, and maybe you've experienced this as well, if you've got a certain frame of mind that you're operating by, even if you don't think you're projecting that outward, people who are sensitive are picking it up. And if you've got a negative attitude about whatever it is that's going on, the people you're talking to, unconsciously, even if not consciously, they pick it up and they don't want to do business with you. But when you're paying yourself first, when you're treating yourself like you deserve to own the money that you're earning, you are projecting that, and that's what other people are picking up, and they want to do business with you.
This is so true. This is fantastic. And as you were building your empire, your property empire, and I know you also do investments, etc., there must have been times when things didn't work out for you, where you felt you were slipping backwards. How did you deal with those moments? How did you keep going even when it seemed as if things weren't working out the way you wanted them to work out for you?
I had a long-term vision. And so, as an example, when we were starting out, we might get a plumbing bill that wiped out our profit for the month. And so we had nothing for that month to show for our efforts. But the longer term vision is what kept me moving forward. I knew that as we were paying down the properties, and I started with a simple formula that I abandoned after a few years because I saw it was irrelevant. But the formula was, for every property that we have, if the rent is $1,000 a month and we've paid it off, that'll be $1,000 a month of income. So that after about 8 years, we had 50 rental units. That would be $50,000 a month of income when they're paid off. But what I saw is we don't ever have to pay them off because they grew in value because of what we were doing. We literally were able to borrow money from the bank because the properties increased in value, and we used that money to buy more property. It's just so. At this point, I have millions of dollars of debt on properties, and it's completely irrelevant because the rental income pays the debt, pays my standard of living, makes the car payments, buys the gasoline, pays my assistant. I mean, the debt has nothing to do. The debt was used to make the purchases. And so I've got no problem paying off debt at this point. I mean, there's no point to it when it's secured by the property. I mean, it's business debt. It's not consumer debt.
I see. Okay. That makes sense. And I'm interested to find out more about the long-term vision. You said that's what kept you moving forward. So without the long-term vision, it's very hard as an entrepreneur, isn't it, to keep going when things aren't going your way. Maybe you've been at your business for a couple of years, you're still feeling you plateaued, you're not making that breakthrough you want. So it's a long-term vision, which is really key here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So if for someone who doesn't have a long-term vision, what would you say about that in terms of how important it is, or how they can even go about having a long-term vision if they don't already have one?
One of the expressions I repeat over and over again to my clients, to myself, is that wealth creation is a team sport. And there's no one that I know that's been fabulously successful that did it by themselves. The idea of a self-made millionaire is a complete falsehood. It's completely untrue. And people who say that are just being full of themselves because they didn't do it by themselves, I guarantee it. So the long-term vision first comes from the individual. And when they doubt it, that's when you need to have people that you can talk to about it, that are there to support you, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a business partner. I made the mistake of becoming a angel investor in a startup business, and I did it by myself, and that was the mistake. Had I consulted with other experts in that arena, had I read books ahead of time on that, I would have found out that there are two people for every successful business, and one is a visionary, and the other is an execution master. And I was ending up being responsible for not only the vision, but the execution. And that doesn't work. You look at Elon Musk, he doesn't run SpaceX. He has a woman running SpaceX. You look at Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett is the visionary. And a lot of people have not heard of Charlie Munger. Well, Charlie Munger is the execution master. He's half of Berkshire Hathaway. I could go through example after example, whether it's General Electric or Facebook or Google. It doesn't make any difference. You've got a vision master, you've got an execution master. Every successful business starts with at least those two and grows from there. So when you've got an entrepreneur who is struggling, he's not in touch with his long-term vision, if he doesn't have someone else in his company with him, then he needs to have a mentor or a coach or someone outside of himself for support, because this is a team effort. It's not a do-it-yourself project.
This is such an important point because it can be so isolating, can't it, being an entrepreneur?
Oh,
You're sitting at
absolutely.
your desk day after day, doing strategies, etc. They may or may not be working for you. And if you don't have someone to pick you up, to bounce ideas off, then it can become a feeling of hopelessness.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's when many people give up and think, well, I'll just go and get a job instead because this just isn't working. But imagine if you had someone who could pick you up, or you could say, hey, that's a great idea. Let's implement that. Or that one's not maybe not going to work so well, but just someone to bounce ideas off. And you and I have had many chats over the years where we want to bounce ideas off each other, etc., and get the opinion of the other person. It makes such a big difference, doesn't it?
It's a huge difference. You could even relate it to the example of a 12-step program. A lot of people are familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous. Here you've got a situation where someone could kill themselves by drinking, whether drinking and driving or just from the alcohol itself. And by having a sponsor in the group who may only be 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, that support structure keeps people alive. So you look all around, whether it's in business or you look in 12-step programs, the concept works where people don't do it by themselves, but they have a team. It's just that simple.
Yes, I completely agree. So, Rennie, what is your number one tip for wealth creation? For someone maybe who doesn't have as big an income as they would like, but they know that this is something they want to work towards, their financial security going forwards. What is the number one tip you can share?
Is that wealthy people ask questions instead of making statements. As an example, we're talking about the concept of pay yourself first. Someone could be listening to this and making statements like, well, I've heard that before, or I know that, or maybe even I've done that before. Okay, those are statements. What they need to do instead is ask questions such as, who can support me with this? Or how do I do that in my situation? Or when will I begin that? Or where does that apply to me? Those are the questions: how, what, when, where, or who, not why. That's not a helpful question. And so the number one tip is wealthy people ask questions because those answers lead to the creation of wealth. It's not like, why do I have lousy clients? It's, how do I get the kind of clients that fit my parameters or what I'm looking for? Or where will I find them? Or who can support me in finding the kind of clients I want? So asking questions will lead to the answers for any entrepreneur that solves those problems.
That's fantastic advice. I love that. And in terms of mindset, what would be your number one mindset tip to help entrepreneurs on their journey to have a more successful business?
I've said it before. I'm not sure if this is a mindset tip, but it's that wealth creation is a team sport, not a solo sport. And when people recognize it's a team effort, they could bring in a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, their wife, a coach, a mentor. And by building that team, they are ensuring their success.
It makes absolute sense. It really does, because why do it on your own when you can share that load with someone else? And it can be devastating, can't it, doing it all on your own? And how can our audience find out more about you and your work?
Oh, simple. They could go to wealthonanyincome.com. They can get a free summary of my best-selling, award-winning book, which is Wealth on Any Income. There's a bunch of business building tools that are free. All they have to do is go to wealthonanyincome.com and they could see a masterclass I presented. They can get free business building tools. That's the easiest way to find out more.
And I would encourage everyone to do that, because I receive your emails and I read each and every one of them. You've got a wonderful way of writing and you give some fantastic content within each email. So it's, I would really encourage everyone to go and check out, especially Rennie's book as well, because I'm in the middle of reading that and I've learned so much from it. So Rennie, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights about how to accumulate wealth. And you are someone who's actually doing it. You're not just talking about it, you're actually doing it. And it's just wonderful to have you here on this show. And for everyone who's been watching or listening, thank you so much for joining us today. Till next time, bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Nina. Bye-bye.